Welcome everybody to the 15th annual Design for Drupal Boston. My name is Patrick Corbett and I'm a volunteer here at D4D along with Leslie Glynn, who will cover some more announcements in just a moment. For those of you who are new to Design for Drupal, this is an annual event devoted to Drupal design, UX, and front-end development, as well as the business and process challenges facing Drupal teams. We will continue with quarterly webinars on various Drupal design and front-end topics and hold an annual conference in the Boston, Massachusetts area. We're pleased to announce that this year we're holding our conference in person at Salem State University, and we'll have more information on that very shortly. We're supported by a great team of volunteers, including Catherine Carruthers handling our video recordings. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine Waldron, who manages our social media and mailings. Thank you, Catherine. And Donna Bungard, who handles sponsorships. Thank you, Donna. And Aubrey Sambor, who provides website support. Thanks, Aubrey. I will now turn things over to Leslie Glynn for some announcements. Leslie.
Thank you, Patrick. Welcome, everybody, to Design for Drupal Boston 2023. It's our 15th anniversary, so we're pretty proud of that. The first slide I have here has a link to these actual slides. There is information on the slides that might be helpful if you want that. There's also a QR code if you'd like to use that as well. So our main webinar is Component-Based Authoring with Drupal. Bring your design system to life with Mercury Editor. We're looking forward to hearing Justin, Catherine, and Brent speak to that, and we will introduce the folks from Atten in a few minutes. As Patrick said, we are announcing our in-person event. Finally got that booked with the venue, Salem State University in Salem, Mass. MIT was doing some renovations this year, so we had to go out and find ourselves a new venue. So we're looking forward to that. It's going to be July 20th to 21st, which is a Thursday and Friday. I just have a picture of where it is there. So typically we're in Boston. It's just slightly north of Boston. There is an MBTA train that goes from Boston up to Salem. So it's pretty convenient. And the university's been there for a long time. So, and it's also in Salem, Massachusetts, which is a tourist destination, usually in October around Halloween, but it's a nice place to visit as well. Our call for sessions is now open. Everybody that's on this webinar, we are a design front-end focused event. So I'm sure there's many people on here that have content that they'd like to present and share with everybody in the community. So please go to the website, Design for Drupal Boston, and design 4boston.org and sign up to add your sessions. We're accepting sessions until June 12th. I know that's a quick turnaround, but we don't have a lot of time before the conference. Sessions 45 minutes long, including Q&A. We are accepting half-day trainings as well, 3 hours. If there's anything that people want to do training on, there's different areas of, that we're looking for content on, UI, UX, theming, etc., community health, business, case studies. So put your session in as soon as possible. Our registrations are also open. This year, we're doing early bird admission, $40, including lunch for both days. Actually, it's including a continental breakfast and lunch for both days. And then the general admission starting on June 10th will be $50. Sign up early if you can, just so we can. It is our first in-person event in 3 years. It is at a new venue, so we want to see what our numbers look like so that we can make sure we have enough rooms and catering and all that kind of stuff. So please sign up early if you can. That would be very helpful to us. We need sponsors. We really need sponsors. Again, new venue. We only have a couple sponsors so far, so there's many different opportunities. Digital sponsorship, all the way up to sponsoring meals or keynotes or the after party. And then there's gold and silver, the main sponsors, which includes some session tickets as well. So please take a look at that. If you want to do a community sponsorship, if you're just attending and you want to give us a little bit of a donation to help out, that would be great as well. So thanks to everybody that has sponsored in the past and everybody that will sponsor this year. We are going to have contributions. We're not going to have a separate contribution day this year. We decided to do a 2-day event for our first year back instead of 3, but we will have contribution during the day, while some of the sessions are going on. Our ongoing webinar series, we decided, we're having this one June and July, we're going to have a break because we're trying to get ready for the in-person event. Then we're going to start up quarterly webinars. The first one is going to be in September. It's going to be September 13th, 6 web design accessibility issues and how to avoid them. So we're looking forward to that. You can sign up for the webinars again at the design4Drupal.org. And if you have any ideas for speakers for future webinars, please reach out. Community events, DrupalCon Pittsburgh is starting on, is going to be run from June 5th to 8th. We're looking forward to that. We'll be looking forward to meeting anybody. Look us up if you're down there in Pittsburgh. DrupalCon Lille, which is the international event, that's being held in October. Again, we're looking forward to going there and meeting folks there as well. Upcoming community events, I won't go through all of these. This weekend, there is Drupal South, which is in New Zealand, but there is a Contrib Day on Friday if folks are interested. That's virtual. There's an event in May in Montreal. Drupal Camp Asheville is in the US. It's July 7th to 9th in Asheville, North Carolina. And then Design for Drupal is in Salem, Massachusetts on the 20th and 21st. If you go to the events page on Drupal.org, it's drupal.org/community/events, you'll see all these. I didn't specifically call out the international ones. I had them on the list there, but you can go to this website and see upcoming events, meetups, trainings, contribution events, everything you can find on that page on Drupal.org. Code of conduct. The code of conduct is in effect, whether it's an in-person event or a digital event. We have the link /code-conduct in the footer of the website. Please go there with any questions. Contact Patrick or myself with any concerns at all. We need help for the 15th anniversary. We specifically need on-site volunteers, people just to spread the message on social media that we're accepting sessions, that it's going to be held, the dates and that kind of stuff. We need speakers, sponsors. So anything you can do to help us out, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you to our goal sponsors so far for 2023. Redfin Solutions has signed up to be a goal sponsor. Dev Collaborative signed up to be a digital sponsor. And we have a couple of in-kind sponsors, OCO Labs and 108 Degrees. So thank you to these sponsors and to everybody. We'll have their logos here for our next webinar and for the event itself. Spread the word, #D4D Boston on social media. Just remember to be kind to everybody you interact with. We really appreciate that. And the Q&As will be at the end. So add your questions to the Q&A chat. And that is it. So I'm going to turn it over to Patrick for introductions. And thank you all for joining.
Thanks, Leslie. Today's presenters, we have a few. Justin Tupin, Catherine Sutton, and Brent Robbins will speak to us about component-based authoring using the Mercury editor. Justin is the CEO of Atten. He started the company back in 2000 with a passion for technology and communications and a desire to do meaningful work. Catherine Sutton is Atten's senior UX UI designer with a passion for insightful user experience, strategy, and elegant design. She's committed to creating work that is useful, accessible, and inclusive. And Brent Robbins is a front-end developer at Atten with over 2 decades of web development experience. He volunteers with Drupal Camp Colorado and is a regular contributor to Drupal. Justin, Catherine, and Brent, welcome to Design for Drupal, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks, Leslie. Really excited to be here. Catherine, why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
Yeah.
And start with that deck.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Everybody see that?
I'm going to assume so. I can see it. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks again,
good.
everybody, for being here. Really excited to be talking with all of you about bringing design systems to life with Mercury Editor. Specifically, we're going to be tackling 3 kind of subject areas in this. First, thinking about design as system rather than just a collection of individual parts. Second, we're going to be talking about publishing and sharing elements of a design system with front-end components. And then finally, we're going to talk about Mercury Editor as a tool for empowering content teams to create content within the parameters of a design system using those front-end components. So again, really excited to be diving in with you guys. My name again is Justin Tupin. I'm the CEO at Atten Design Group. We are a strategy, design, and development agency based in Denver, although we are fully distributed at this point with folks all around the country, as well as in a few other places around the world. We essentially do everything involved in planning, designing, building, maintaining, and helping grow digital platforms, products, websites, web applications, mostly for organizations with .org, .gov, and .edu domain names. We have been working with Drupal for a long time at this point, since back in 2006, version 4.7, and in recent years have been doing a lot of work in the authoring experience and really spending a lot of time focusing on building tools to help marketing teams and editorial teams create content easily in Drupal without having to keep going back to development teams. I am joined today by two incredibly talented colleagues. Super happy to have them here and to hear some of what they're going to talk to us about. Catherine Sutton, a senior UX UI designer on our team, is going to be talking again about, going to be walking through a process for thinking about design as a system and creating design systems rather than just individual pieces of a design. Brent Robbins is a front-end developer here at Atten, is going to be talking about then publishing components of those design systems as front-end components. And then I'll talk a little bit about Mercury Editor, again, going back to our work in the authoring experience and creating content editing tools. I'll be talking about Mercury as a way to empower content teams to create content within the parameters of a design system, leveraging those front-end components. So really excited to work through this. Catherine, why don't you take it away? Tell us a little more about what you do and talk to us about your process for creating design systems.
Thank you, Justin. Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Sutton. I am the senior UX UI designer at Atten Design Group. My pronouns are she, her. And as Justin mentioned, today I'm going to talk through the collaborative design process we have here at Atten that allows us to create beautiful editable sites based on customizable components and design systems. So to begin discussing that process, I must start with Atten's fundamental design philosophy. So luckily, every project that comes through the door at Atten is totally unique with its own set of goals, audiences, complexities, brand identities, and so forth. So finding out about what makes a project really interesting and unique to me and the team at Atten is how we get inspired and create something that is really authentic to that brand we're working with and resonates with their users. So to accomplish this, there are four kind of key motivating factors or philosophical ideas, I would say, that stem from our culture that permeate throughout our process and empower us to be successful. So first, that process must be adaptable. As I mentioned earlier, we tremendously respect the unique potential of every single project that we get. We don't implement any kind of agnostic cookie cutter approaches, but rather our process and deliverables are suited to meet the client's budget, timeline, goals, users, and technology requirements. Secondly, we work to create things that are really sustainable. Our clients invest a lot of time and resources into the work, which means that we, as their creative partners, must ensure the final product is easy to use with a flexible backend and a robust design system that can withstand content updates, changes in the web, and user behavior for years and years to come. Thirdly, we require that all websites must be accessible. So we probably know what that means. That is that the content and design system are very user-friendly with many use cases in mind and available to people of all abilities. We lean on research-backed UX principles to guide our rationale and creativity too. And finally, we must pursue design excellence to ensure the website remains relevant and credible over time. We strive not only to make the experience seamless, streamlined, and subtle, but we also want users to be delighted and pleasantly surprised when experiencing our work in the real world. These underlying principles are also what helps us create component-based design systems suited to the needs of the project. So from end to end, every step and direction and decision we make will have downstream effects on what we end up building and what tools the client has in the final product. Now, let's see how this whole methodology shows up in a case study for Sanford Underground Research Facility, or SURF. SURF is the US's deepest underground research facility designed for advancements in science that can only take place far below the surface of the Earth. Today, they're working with an international team of over 1,000 scientists and engineers from more than 30 countries to build the most advanced neutrino experiment in the world. SURF is also known as a center for teaching science to K-12 students, a patron of local arts, and a steward of cultural and geological conservation. Our creative partnership with SURF has led to 3 fantastic projects touching on SURF's main brand, a new sister identity, and their flagship annual science festival called Neutrino Day. So each year, Neutrino Day takes place across SURF's facilities and public sites in downtown Lead, South Dakota. SURF hosts a variety of events, including family-friendly science demonstrations, tours, hands-on activities, and more. SURF also hosts annual speakers, including leading scientists at SURF, as well as well-known individuals in the science community. So we collaborated with SURF to rebrand and build a new website for this long-running event. Previously, as shown here, the brand has taken on a new theme year after year. So in this engagement, SURF wanted to create a permanent identity for Neutrino Day and move away from ongoing themes that would refresh on an ongoing basis. So first, we kicked off the creative process with our digital strategist, Kelsey Boyd, facilitating conversations with the Neutrino Day team to gather context, information, goals, and aspirations through a series of discovery discussions and workshops. Depending on the scope and complexity of the project, our strategy process will utilize a number of tools. In the case of Neutrino Day, for us to get the best information, this included stakeholder workshops, defining user personas, conducting brand analysis, and writing narrative nodes, which is our term for dictating key messages, concepts, or content on a given page outlined in the sitemap. Our key takeaways included that our audiences included families, children, scientists, science enthusiasts, educators, international and local scientists, volunteers, and Neutrino Day staff. The brand also had to balance between being perceived as a celebratory family-friendly event and a host for the science community to share work among peers. The brand had to grow with SURF's goals to expand the reach and variety of the event to include virtual talks, further incorporation of the arts, and involvement from the local community. Next, our information architecture work was greatly informed by these findings. We created a high-level sitemap and a series of wireframes to plan out the website and align on high-level messaging and brand goals. We also began to collaborate with our development team to align on functionality and backend architecture. With this, we began to get a glimpse of the necessary components for the upcoming design system. But before we could go further into that, we had to start with establishing a new visual identity for Neutrino Day based on our findings. Our goal was to develop a brand system that will make celebrating Neutrino Day a joy from year to year. So first, we created a logo, which was a super fun process for all of us. Honestly, that's a webinar for another day. So I'll direct you to our blog to learn more about that. That's at atten.io/articles. So just like how our strategy process kicks off with discovery work, there's of course a bit of discovery and exploration that takes place at Atten before we start website design. In a typical design discovery workshop, we would cover the following: a visual identity audit, which is assessing the client's visual identity to unlock possibilities for their brand to evolve during the project; comparative analysis, discussing aspirational website design examples for color, navigation, typography, photography, graphic elements, and more; peer analysis, discussing aspirational strategy and design approaches using examples from the client's peers or adjacent sectors; design drivers, attributing values to the look and feel. So that might be something like describing a brand with terms like bold, dynamic, energetic, elegant, and vibrant. After the initial discovery, we dove into design exploration. We typically use a tool called style tiles developed outside of the context of a design system or page comps. These let us share ideas for possible design directions that align us with the visual drivers that we have identified earlier. Often when we create style tiles, we are looking for fundamental themes for the design. So for Neutrino Day, we focused on creating a design language that elevated white space, displayed stylish typography, and utilized these particle-based geometric shapes to provide color and a sense of whimsy to the work. Once we've aligned on those design fundamentals, we moved on to creating a design system. The first baby steps include setting up a color and typography palette. Developing a design system has to strike the right balance between manifesting strategic goals and decisions and creating useful, flexible components. Typically for Atten, this means starting with a given context or use case that is essential to the user experience or brand, and then start building from there. So in the case of Neutrino Day, we created a splashy homepage designed to visualize our findings and discovery and strategy for users, dictating what components would be created to construct that homepage. Next, we created designs for the functionality and features that made this site exciting to use, including an interactive schedule of events, a blog, directory of speakers and staff, and updates for volunteers. Throughout this work, we apply the fundamental elements of the design system and then use that to create new components. And finally, we created a basic page layout that articulates all the possible components and use cases for the authoring system. Along the way, we collaborated with our accessibility and QA specialist, Michaela Lederman, to ensure the work met standards for accessibility, usability, and sustainability before moving into development. Our chief tool for all design deliverables is Figma, a collaborative design tool that is well suited for teams composed of designers, developers, project managers, clients, and stakeholders. So we at Atten use Figma to create almost anything that touches on design and strategy. That's anything from presentations to workshops, information architecture, wireframes design, design documentation, interactive prototypes, and more. So after client approval, we moved into documenting this whole design system for development. The goal is to hand off components and layouts to our dev team so that the design system can be translated into a flexible authoring experience. We are proud of having a documentation system that is very thorough and detailed and makes the designer's intentions as clear as possible. Our documentation focuses on style fundamentals, components, and responsive layouts. The fundamentals include color, typography across various styles and screen sizes, UI icons, and more. For the components, we articulated the elements, fields, and interactions for things like buttons, cards, teasers, forms, menus, media, and more. Often, we will display notes and annotations for every component to make that direction absolutely clear. I hope for today that you can see that the systems we build at Atten are born from a strategic, creative, and meaningful process. Without story, without inspiration, or without any context, of course, we would miss the mark with our clients and their users and end up with a product that would need to be redesigned after a short period of time. Our end goal for design systems is that they serve users of all kinds and elevate the client's brand to new potential. So, and thanks for listening to me chat with you about design. So what's next for us to discuss today is how this design system we created is then translated into flexible, usable components in development. And so for that, I will pass things over to Brent. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Again, my name is Brent Robbins, and I'm a front-end developer here at Atten. Today, I'm going to discuss why and how we use components at Atten in our front-end development process. Just a fair warning, we are going to get into some technical content. Components are a building block, or are building blocks of the design system that Catherine just discussed. Components serve as building blocks for constructing the user interface of a website or application offering you reusability and versatility. These UI components can include buttons, menus, cards, heroes, sliders, and other interactive elements. UI components are designed to be modular, reusable, which makes it easier to create consistent and cohesive user interface across an entire website or application or even multiple projects. They can easily be customized and styled to match the overall design of the site or application. Catherine talked about adaptability, sustainability, and accessibility as fundamental aspects of a design system. Front-end components are a great practical way to help extend those themes throughout development and maintenance phases. UI components can help speed up the development process, reduce code duplication, and make it easier to maintain and update a website or application over time. The utilization of UI components fosters a consistent user experience, leading to enhanced usability and increased user engagement. Components are modular, reusable, and consistent in look and feel, making web pages or applications scalable. Again, this speaks to those fundamental themes of sustainability and adaptability. Isolated testing of components can help identify and fix bugs, which makes it even easier to ensure our sites and applications are accessible. Teams of developers can collaborate more effectively by sharing and reusing components across different projects, again, assisting in sustainability. A single directory UI component groups all of the necessary code and associated files into one folder, streamlining file navigation and simplifying component sharing. To use components effectively in websites and applications, the concept of components needs to be initiated in the design process Catherine mentioned previously, and not just started in the front-end development. Communication is critical to the success of building components. As a front-end developer, it's my responsibility to work closely with my designer to collaborate on the component design and to make sure we're consistently both on the same page. Here at Atten, we've used components in our front-end development process for at least the last 5 years since I've started here at Atten. We've used the contributed Drupal module components to help organize components in our custom themes. This module helps develop UI components by allowing you to specify a different directory for your components, libraries, twig files, and also allows you to register a unique twig namespace for those components. Here are the steps to set up a custom component using the components module. First, we need to declare the namespace and the location of the components directory in the custom themes.info file. Then create the custom components directory and create a twig file for your components markup. Also include all of your relevant assets, such as your JavaScript and style files. You can see that illustrated in the screenshot here. We have our custom theme, and we have the component, the root of the directory, and we have the custom component example here, the accordion, and then all of the relevant files. Not included in the module, but in our custom theme, we've configured our build tools to watch the component directories and build the CSS and JavaScript in a separate directory in the root of the custom theme. You can see that illustrated also in this screenshot. And again, in the root of the theme, we have a dist folder, and that's where we put the CSS and JavaScript. Next, create a library for your components, CSS and JavaScript files in the custom themes.libraries file. So you can see in the screenshot for this component quote, we're creating a library for the CSS, but of course you could add JavaScript when necessary as well to your library. In your custom components directory, create a custom twig file to render the content, and also make sure you add a line to attach the library you created for the component. In a screenshot, you can see this is that line to attach the library. So now the relevant CSS and JavaScript will be attached to this component. And then below, you can see we're rendering the content. Finally, we need to override the Drupal template to get Drupal's values and pass them as props to the custom component. Most often, at least for us, it's a paragraph. So in this screenshot example, I'm overriding a paragraph template for the quote paragraph and passing all of the Drupal values to our custom quote component. As far as testing goes, we create a node page called the kitchen sink. To do this, we first create a node and then override that node's template. Then we manually add all of our components to that template. This is helpful to see all the components listed on the page for internal QA review. So in this screenshot, you can see I've given that title to the component. So that's helpful for whoever is QAing the component. And then you can see I'm attaching or including the custom component, but I'm manually adding content. Now I'm going to show you the kitchen sink page that we've created for the Neutrino Day website. So this is the actual Neutrino Day kitchen sink page, and this lists out all of the components that we've created for the site. And again, this is just for internal review. We don't give this to the client to review. So along with the kitchen sink page, we also create at least a few pages that duplicate exactly our Figma designs to represent actual pages using real content. These pages are helpful to see how the components work within sections of pages layouts. This also gives our QA and accessibility expert, Michaela, the opportunity to edit the content using Drupal, which tests the authoring experience, as well as stress test the components. These pages are the examples that we actually share with the client to review. This space is advancing really fast, and now things are getting easier and more powerful using CL components or Drupal core single directory components module. CL components is the precursor to the single directory components, which was added to Drupal core in version 10.1, and both were developed primarily by Matteo. The two modules are not identical, but share many similarities. Both share the core principle of a single directory component where all of the relevant files are centralized in a single directory. The two modules will automatically create a library by detecting all of the relevant CSS and JavaScript files, so you no longer need to manually create a library for your components. Single directory components has a very similar component.yaml structure to CL components. And both work with the CL server submodule, which provides integration with Storybook, a component QA and development environment. Our kitchen sink page will now be replaced by the much more useful and powerful Storybook. Using this setup will actively watch your components and automatically update Storybook when changes are made. Both work with the CL generator submodule, which is a separate module for quickly scaffolding components using a CLI. As far as differences go between the two modules, when using single directory components, the components folder has been now moved from /templates/components to just /components. The biggest difference is introduced by the convention of slots in addition to props. Props are similar to, props are for simple data structures such as strings, numbers, booleans, arrays. They will be escaped, so they're typically not suitable for data containing any markup or twig template strings. However, slots are used for content/markup. So anything passed into slots will be rendered as an inline template. This makes it appropriate for nested components, templates, or themed content from Drupal. For example, you could use it to render a responsive image or a formatted field. Here are the steps to set up a custom component using the CL component module. Again, it's very similar to the single directory component setup. First, we want to create our custom UI component folder within the templates directory in your custom theme. This is where you need to add all of your relevant files. So you can see in my 2 screenshots, I have the root of the components directory here, and then I have an example, a little bit more advanced example with this accordion item that has JavaScript and CSS, but you can see all of the relevant files being added. And this is a more simplified component for the quote, but it has the CSS and the component and all the other relevant files. So these screenshots demonstrate a convention that we've came up with by adding our source JavaScript and SCSS files to a SRC directory. Then we have our custom themes build tool set to watch those directories and then add the generated files in the /CSS and /JavaScript directories within the component. So everything's isolated still within that one component. We use this structure as well as a custom theme function that unsets the JavaScript file in the source directory to avoid that also being added to the component. And you can see that probably best illustrated in the screenshot on the right, where we have the source directory, where we have the JavaScript and the SCSS, and that's being rendered out in the CSS file or folder. So that's being included and in the component, and the source JavaScript file in the SRC one is being rendered out in the JavaScript or the JS folder, and that only that is being attached to the component. Next, create a custom twig file to render the component. And in this example, in the screenshot, you can see I have a block quote, and I'm just printing out all of the content. It's very similar to the components module as well. Then create a component YAML file to define the actual component itself. This is used to auto-generate the library of assets, but also used to extend the functionality of CL components. So you can see I have a schema defined, and then machine name and the friendly name, and then the actual schema defined for our quote below. If you would like your component to work with Storybook, you need to create a stories YAML file to define the arguments, argument types, and stories. So you can see 2 examples of this. We have a more simplified quote, and we have the args set up for the quote, for the credit, and then stories. I have it set to default, which we'll just use the default args. And then in this example, we have I've introduced an arg types. And what this does is in Storybook gives an interface element to change what type of quote this is. So it could be a full width quote or a centered quote. And we have 2 different stories. We have a full width story and a centered story. And so those just define like what examples those are in Storybook. For testing, we continue to convert a few of the Figma designs to functional pages, but now with CL components and single directory, we can replace our kitchen sink page with Storybook. We are still transitioning from the kitchen sink approach to Storybook, so we only have a few examples, but I'll demonstrate Storybook here. So this is the simple quote, but you can see in Storybook, the QA expert could come in and like add a bunch of different content here. It gives you the inputs to do so. And This is a little bit more complex component here, this header or section header arrow, and it gives you controls to change out the title, the size, the URL, the header style, the header weight. And so when I click on header weight, I could change it to like a bold one. So it's like, you know, it changes the style, like just all in the interface, really super simple, which is really helpful for when we're reviewing or testing our components. With these modules, we can now effectively build powerful design systems that are adaptable, sustainable, accessible with our components built within Drupal. Now, thanks for your time, and that's all I have for components and our front-end development process. Now I'm going to pass this off to Justin so he can show you how all this will work within the Mercury authoring tools.
Just looking for my unmute. Thanks, Brent. Thanks, Catherine. So just to recap really quick, Catherine's taken us through a process for thinking about design as a system. Brent's talked about some of the technical ways to publish elements of that system using front-end components. I'm going to talk about Mercury Editor. Mercury Editor is, again, an authoring tool that allows content teams to create content within the parameters of those design systems, leveraging those front-end components that Brent was talking about. For anyone who wants to learn more about what I'm talking about, I'll be pretty quick with this today. We are going to do a webinar on this exact subject, on what's new with Mercury Editor here in a couple months. This QR code will take you to that webinar. You can also go to that short URL, atten.io/ME for Mercury Editor-webinar. Let me start just really quick by saying what Mercury is for those who are not familiar. Mercury is first and foremost a Drupal module. This was, early on, Mercury was essentially a series of customizations for each project that we applied on top of a collection, almost like a recipe of different Drupal modules. One of the most significant ones being layout paragraphs. Anymore, this is a downloadable module directly from Drupal.org. So a lot of the authoring experience stuff that we're going to see, you can benefit from just by downloading the module. Mercury provides a no-code drag and drop editing experience, again, built on a collection of other Drupal modules that offer styles management, centralized styles management for managing and applying custom styles across an entire website or collection of sites. Offers a streamlined UI, and what we mean by that is just a UI that's specifically tailored to the needs of marketers and editorial teams. And we'll get into that in just a second as well. And then finally, it is based on a custom component library. Mercury is based on layout paragraphs, which in turn is based on paragraphs, and it uses paragraph types in Drupal as the basis for that component library, and then leveraging some of the methods that Brent just talked about for achieving the front end look and feel. So that's just a quick overview of what Mercury is. I'm going to jump in and just using the exact same site that we were just talking about, I'm going to run through a demo of what Mercury actually does. So this is a Drupal website. I'm logged in as an admin user. We're using the Gin admin theme. If you're not familiar, I highly, highly recommend checking out the Gin admin theme. Provides all kinds of really awesome customizations to the admin experience. Mercury essentially just takes over the content creation and edit screen for whatever content types in Drupal that you've configured it to do so. So I'm happy to talk about how that configuration works, but for right now, I'm just going to jump in. So I go to add content. We're basically going to replicate this homepage, which is the basic page content, by creating a new basic page. Should throw out a brief disclaimer that this is running on a dev instance on my local machine. So it's a little slower than it would be if it were not on my local machine. Zoom's not making that any faster for sure. Okay, so right off the bat, we can see a number of differences here from the typical Drupal content creation screen. The form is off to the right in this content or in this edit tray. On the left-hand side, we have a preview of exactly what we're working on with this add section button, which is coming from layout paragraphs. So any layout paragraphs fields you have on your content is going to automatically be enabled once you're working with Mercury. I'm just going to get started by adding a new section. So I click the Add Section button. I'll add a one-column section. Click on the plus button. Again, we're seeing all of these components, which are elements of the design system created by Catherine and then published as web components, or rather as front-end components from the process that Brent was talking us through. I'm going to add a new heading, which is something that we just looked at in the storybook a second ago. I'm going to say where science and fun collide, and I'll wrap collide in bold, change this to a heading 2, and hit save, and it drops the component immediately on the page. I'm going to go in and change some of the styles of this. Again, we have the centralized styles management. This is all configured in a single YAML file that's central to the entire project and custom to the needs of each project. I'm going to switch this to the normal style instead of bold. So then we get this lighter typeface, and only the word collide, which I had added that strong tag to, is now a little bolder. I'm going to add another component. This time I'll go to date and location, which is fairly specific to this project, given that this project has a specific date and location. Say this is going to happen in Lead, South Dakota, and everywhere else. Again, I'll just add some strong tags in there to make some of that stand out a little bit better. So we've added our custom date and time component. Again, immediately drops it into the interface. There's drag and drop controls on all of this. You can drag any of these components around, use the up and down buttons to bump them up and down. And that'll become even clearer just how convenient and powerful that is as we work through here. I'll add a text component now, grab some text from off screen, paste in the text, throw in a quick URL. We'll make this go to a link that may or may not be the correct URL, but at least gives us an idea of how this works. Choose the yellow button style for that URL, hit save, and again, it drops that component right into the page. At any time, I can hit save. Oh, and it's telling me I need to actually name my page. So we'll call this new basic, or rather, we'll just call it new homepage. Hit save. And then at any time, we can hit the done button, which will take us to the front end view of this page. It's looking pretty good. Obviously needs some more content. I'll click back in and we'll just add a few more sections to our new page. Again, just as an example of how Mercury works. One other thing that's new in this version of Mercury, well, a couple features that I think are relatively minor, but super useful. We can easily get that edit tray out of our way if we like, so that we can just focus on the content that's in front of us. We also have this mobile preview, and there is configuration for configuring for each site independently what different screen sizes we want to be able to see our work in. There are also options. It's not in this project, but in some projects where we're dealing with a lot of multi-column content, there are options for changing the kind of the break order, what order they stack for mobile. And that mobile preview makes it really convenient to quickly see what you're doing. Catherine mentioned as a part of the design system, creating these geometric patterns that just kind of add a sense of whimsy and really elevate the brand. Those, again, are part of this centralized styles management piece. I'm going to choose this option 9. We can see a preview of that. Again, that drops in and we can immediately see our changes. Add another one column. Within this column, I'll add a video. Mercury integrates seamlessly with the media library in Drupal. I'll add a new video, give it a caption. Hit save. All of these are paragraph types. So again, if you're familiar with the paragraphs module in Drupal, that's what's responsible for creating all of these components kind of under the hood. I'm just going to create 1 or 2 more sections, then we'll kind of wrap this part up and open things up for questions. So I'll do one more. I'll actually do a 3-column here. Hit save. We'll add a person link to the left. And we'll go again into styles, choose the card style, hit save. It's added our person. We'll do the same thing in the center here. And this time we'll do Chief Henry Red Cloud. Again, with styles, we'll choose card, hit save. I'm going to quickly just duplicate that just for convenience, drag it over to the right-hand column, click edit again. This time, let's see here, we'll grab Sam. Add Sam, hit save. This is also using that styles management piece. So if I click edit, this is looking okay, but I actually want to use a slightly different style for the arrangement of these people. So I can go back in. First, I want to just make this a one column. When I switch from 3 to 1, it's asking me what I want to do with the content that would be essentially orphaned. So I'm just going to say, move everything from secondary to content and tertiary to content, hit save. So let's put it all in the same column. Then I'm going to go in and change the style for these featured speakers, change this first one to the featured style, change the second one to the default style, which is similar, just a little bit smaller, change the final one to the default style. That's looking pretty good, although we need a little bit more space between these items. To achieve that, I'm just going to add one more one-column section, put this person in the first section, add another section, and put the second person in the second section. And again, hopefully you're getting a sense for some of the kinds of in real-time design decisions that can be made with this tool that, again, are still happening within the confines of the overarching design system and component library. I'm going to add just one more section. And within this section, I'm going to add a video, or rather an image gallery. We'll add media, grab an image, hit insert. We'll add another image, and each image itself comes with a media reference plus a caption. I'm going to skip the caption just for sake of time. And we'll add one more item here. Let's grab this one, see how that goes. Hit save. And we can see our gallery component drop right onto the screen. I'd like this to stretch full screen, so we have a style for that as well. I'll click into the section, go to styles, choose the full width option and hit save. And now we have that, again, stretching full width. This, again, the preview, the live preview is showing a version of this page that is almost identical. I mean, really the only difference between this and the actual view tab for this page are the controls for managing the content. I'm going to hit save and then close out of this by hitting done. And that is just a really quick look at some of the capabilities of Mercury. Again, we'd love for you to join the webinar. If you go to atten.io/webinars and sign up to be notified of webinars, there's one in July where we will be talking specifically about the new features in Mercury Editor. And I think that is just about all we have for you all today. Thanks again for being here. And with that, I think we can turn things over for questions.
All right. Thanks, Justin. That was great. We have one question that's come in, and I'll just kick things off just for folks who maybe be a little bit new to the concepts that you introduced. What are some of the ways that folks can do what you're accomplishing with Mercury Editor, but without the Mercury? Like, what are the options today aside from the Mercury Editor?
That's a great question. So there are a handful of tools in Drupal that make it easy to edit content and make it easy to edit more complex types of content. One thing that Mercury often is compared to is Layout Builder. And when I say compared, a question we often get is, how is this different than Layout Builder? Layout Builder is really all about exposing every single block in the Drupal ecosystem or in a Drupal site to a drag and drop interface. And is, in our view, a little more of a site builder tool than it is a authoring tool. And that's something we really wanted to focus on with Mercury. There's a lot of enhancements with CK Editor 5 also. I mean, at the end of the day, though, the content that's managed by CK Editor 5 is a little outside of kind of the structured content paradigm. It's not fieldable content with entities. It's really just markup is dumped into a raw text field. Same goes for Gutenberg. The port of Gutenberg from WordPress, again, saves content as just raw text. At the end of the day, it's like storing content as text in a database field, and it doesn't give some of the same controls and at the API level that paragraphs do, which is why we chose to standardize on paragraphs. I know there's a few other folks doing things like this in the authoring space. I think a lot of that is using Layout Builder, some maybe with paragraphs, but I think there's a lot of work with Layout Builder to do that too.
Awesome. I'm going to get started with the questions, since there's quite a few gathering up here. The first one is from Jim. They ask, can I clone a section layout and then use that elsewhere with different content?
That's a great question, Jim. There's a experimental module in Mercury for doing just that. And it's something that can be turned on. It's still under active development though. So that's something that we're working on. And it basically leverages a custom entity type to make it really easy. It offers like a clone button. You hit the clone button, or rather the stamp button, and it saves a copy. It lets you name the copy and you can drag it in elsewhere. That is something that should be ready for release in the next, real soon, certainly by the time we do this webinar in July.
Next question, how do you balance the power of this tool with keeping it easy to use for the average editor? I'm wondering if they're thinking it was maybe a little overwhelming at first, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think what this question might be getting at is something that I'm sure Catherine can relate to, which is giving authors too much power, giving content editors the ability to create content in ways that really is outside of the parameters of a design system, and too much flexibility. There is a module, again, within the Mercury Editor ecosystem, and there are APIs within Mercury Editor for governing exactly what components can be added to what sections, to what regions. And that's our first method for trying to accomplish that, is just making sure that only the components we wish to be published in certain areas can be published in certain areas. I think the other side of that is there's probably Mercury should only be enabled for the content authors, a group of content authors for whom it makes the most sense, like almost like a group of kind of power users or super users who are kind of trusted to create that particular type of content.
That makes sense. Joe asks, is the editing experience in Mercury Editor accessible for blind authors?
That's a great question. We have not done yet enough work on the accessibility aspect of Mercury. Now, I say that we do follow, we have done some work. So you can tab through the interface. There are appropriate IA labels on most interface elements. And, I want to say it should work, but we haven't done as much testing as I would like to do. We certainly haven't done as much testing as we do on client projects. We do, for a lot of, we have both an internal accessibility expert and a partnership with the Blind Institute of Technology. Accessibility is a huge priority for us, and we're not quite there yet with Mercury Editor.
Jay asks, does the Mercury Editor track unsaved drafts?
Does it track unsaved drafts? So Mercury, I'm not sure what that question is getting at. So it works with drafts the same way that main edit form works with drafts. So until you hit save, nothing has been saved to the database. Once you hit the save button, the content that you're working on is saved to the database in whatever draft the draft dropdown is left in. So if you have it in unpublished, or if you have it in draft state, for example, in that dropdown, you hit save, it's saved in the draft state, but it's not saved until you hit the save button.
Okay, maybe Jay can post another question if he wants to clarify. Anonymous wrote, this can be an option if you use a Bootstrap theme, and they just offer the Bootstrap Layout Builder module, it looks like. I don't know if you have any experience with that. But.
No, I don't. And again, it's easily, because some of the interface aspects are similar between Layout Builder and Layout Paragraphs, which is what Mercury is built on top of. It's easy to sort of confuse the two. There are some fundamental differences just in that Layout Builder is really all about placing blocks, and Layout Paragraphs is all about moving paragraphs around on a page.
Okay. We're a bit over time, but I'm going to keep going through. We've still got about, I don't know, 36 people on. And so if you still have time, I can try to shoot through the rest of these, Justin.
Works for us, works for me anyways. Yeah. Works.
Okay. And let's see here. And this will be all recorded, so we can post that if people need to leave right now. Let's see. Next question. Can you mention in the chat where all the modules that you discussed are in the presentation? We can post that either to the website, or we can post that. It looks like somebody already got it. We're recording the webinar. It'll be available soon. So if we can just post maybe some links to that would be great.
That sounds great. On the module page for Mercury Editor on Drupal.org, there's a list of the modules that are involved. So you can definitely find out that way also. The main additional module that Mercury Editor mostly is a customization or a layer built on top of Layout Paragraphs. So Layout Paragraphs is the main player. The other one is Style Options. Style Options is also used pretty extensively by Mercury Editor.
Okay, great. Let's see. Can you mention where all the we have the same question. Jay asked, can you create reusable paragraphs like you can with blocks?
Yes, you can. There are a couple of ways to do that. The Paragraphs library is one of the leading ones where you can create a library of reusable paragraphs. And then there is an integration between Layout Paragraphs and Paragraphs library. So in theory, yes, absolutely, you can use it in that route. I'm not sure if I've personally had experience with that yet, but in theory, yes, you can do that. And there are a few other ways to create, you can do like blocks reference fields or views reference fields from paragraphs. That's another way to kind of create reusable content. We'll often embed views by using a views reference field that's a part of a paragraph. When I was showing that person, dropping that person onto the page with the Mercury demo a second ago, that was what was actually happening there. Is it's in that case an entity reference field on the paragraph. So.
Gotcha. I think this is a dupe, but can I embed a reusable block?
Yeah, and again, the route to do that would probably be to create like a block reference field, and go about it that way.
Next question from Joe. For a site that makes heavy use of paragraphs and no layout builder, what level of work is needed to install and make use of the Mercury editor?
Yeah, great question. So Mercury, again, is built on layout paragraphs. So the first step would be getting the site running with layout paragraphs. Although if you just install Mercury, it will correctly, of course, require the layout paragraphs module also. A lot of the work that has to happen is more on sort of the design and planning front. Like you'll need a paragraph to serve as your section paragraph type, and then you'll need to start thinking about, does anything need to change in the way your paragraphs are designed to work well with this kind of layout approach with the ability to drag things around in the layout. The actual development work, not that much, but the kind of planning and design work, there are certainly things to think through. For us, we're usually using Mercury in kind of the way that we've talked about today, like first thinking about the design system, then articulating that design system as components, then bringing those components to life with Mercury. And that's a little different than the process of like retrofitting, although we've done that too.
So it sounds like it's possible to have a site already and then install either some of the supporting modules to get it in place, or install Mercury and then kind of introduce. Gotcha.
Yeah. And like many things in Drupal, I mean, you can always, on a dev instance or on a dev branch or whatever your kind of build process is, install it, turn it on for the content type in question, and start kind of chasing down issues.
Cool. Let's see. If the component files are all defined per theme, how can they be easily reused in other themes? Would you just copy the files over, or how would that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Brent, do you have an answer for that one? Is it possible to reuse, or how are components reused across themes?
So you could just you could clone like, especially with CL components, since everything's encapsulated into one folder, one directory, you could just copy it, put it into the root of the other site's component directory. The main thing that I've seen that is tricky is, like, so let's say you're referencing like in styles, like you might be referencing variables, like for your CSS, so you would have to update that. But other than that, like, since everything is encapsulated into that one directory with this concept, it's very like it's really easy to move things around in different projects. I think just the style, like modifying the style and then updating those the variables, the CSS variables, would be like the only thing you would need to change.
Let's see, from Joshua, you mentioned an admin theme with your Mercury setup. Could you add a link or a name to it again? I think it was the Gin editor or Gin theme, right?
Gin theme, yeah, the Gin admin theme. And just to be clear about that, also, Gin is what's being used on the site as a whole as the admin theme. We actually do not use Gin for the Mercury pages specifically. For the Mercury pages specifically, we're using Claro. There's options in Mercury settings where you can choose which theme you want to use. We're actually, for the Mercury pages specifically, we want the simplest admin theme possible. So that's kind of the goal there.
Good to know. Let's see, is there a fallback, Philip asked, to the legacy Drupal paragraphs UI? Is that possible to fall back?
I suppose that's possible. I mean, I suppose it's possible. I'm not sure of a use case where that would practically work, just because you would lose all the controls for layout. All of that's using paragraph behaviors. So there's nothing like, theoretically it would work. Having a hard time visualizing what the actual use case would be, though.
Something to try.
Yeah, go for it.
And then the last question from Jim is content created through the UI searchable?
It is the same way that content created through paragraphs is searchable. So that would be passed along to the search API, just the same way paragraphs are. Because that's all they are. It really is just like a paragraph reference field.
Gotcha. Awesome. That is the end of questions. We're a little bit over time, but Leslie, do you have a few finishing comments here?
No, I just want to thank everybody for joining and hanging around later to get all your questions answered. Very interesting webinar. Thank you, Justin, Brent, and Catherine, for spending the time with us today. And we look forward to seeing everybody at our in-person event in July.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.